You're just a waitress. The words rang louder than the live jazz quartet in the corner. Carla Donovan's wine-red lips curled upward as she raised her glass toward the guests, making sure they heard her. Escort her out, she added, eyes glinting beneath the glittering chandelier. She doesn't belong here. The servers in white gloves hesitated. One even looked at me with something that almost resembled pity. I didn't move. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. The entire ballroom had gone silent, except for the violinist. She kept playing. Poor thing. I felt every pair of eyes on me. Some curious, some smug, and a few absolutely delighted. The rich adore a public humiliation as long as they're not the ones on stage. Especially when it's someone like me. A nobody in their eyes. A waitress in a borrowed dress standing next to a 3-tier chocolate fountain. I didn't belong. They wanted me gone. And Carla, my stepmother, the queen of the Donovan estate, had made sure to deliver the dagger in front of everyone. From board members to brand ambassadors to actors and politicians. The people who mattered. The people she spent her life sucking up to. My throat burned, but I didn't let it show. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. Instead, I looked at her once, straight in the eye, and took a step toward the doors. Wait, Carla said coldly, pretending she had any grace. Shouldn't she thank us for inviting her at all? That brought a few chuckles from the back. Some of my relatives smirked behind champagne flutes. A cousin mouthed, "This is what you get." I swallowed the lump in my throat. My heels clicked across the marble as I headed toward the massive gold-trimmed exit. No one moved to stop me. They were too entertained. I had one hand on the door handle when the entrance burst open behind me. Wide, fast, and loud. The music stopped, and in walked him. 6'2", charcoal black tailored suit. A presence that made the entire room freeze mid-breath. Even Carla's voice caught in her throat. Mara? His voice was sharp, laced with disbelief and rage. Why are you standing near the door? My fingers curled into my palm. My pulse exploded. But I didn't turn. I didn't answer. The crowd parted as he strode forward, every step powerful, purposeful, as if he owned the ground beneath him. Because he did. Behind him, a few men in dark suits followed, his private security. And behind them, his name, lit up in gold on the massive banners across the ballroom. The Gala was his. I hadn't known. I hadn't been told. He didn't stop walking until he stood in front of me. His hand gently touched my arm and turned me to face him. He looked at me like I was the only person in that room. Like I was air after drowning. Then he raised his voice, not yelling, but loud enough that every guest, every relative, and every venomous smile could hear it crystal clear. I don't remember authorizing anyone to humiliate my wife at my event. Gasps. Pure, sharp gasps echoed. Carla's face dropped. My cousin turned a shade paler than her pearls. One man in the back coughed and whispered, "Wife. Wife." Carla stammered. She's a waitress, Jason. She doesn't belong here. He didn't even look at her. Jason Hayes, tech mogul, billionaire, philanthropist, and the most feared boardroom strategist in the country, held my hand, laced his fingers through mine, and said into the silence, "She belongs wherever I am." Then he turned to the crowd. "And if any of you have a problem with that, you can get the hell out." Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. I stood there, shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the sudden shift in the world around me. The ones who mocked me 5 seconds ago couldn't meet my eyes now. Carla's jaw twitched. She looked around for support and found none. Jason gently leaned in. "Did they really tell you to leave?" he whispered against my ear. I nodded once. He turned back toward his security. "Escort her out." Everyone turned, expecting him to mean me. He pointed straight at Carla. Silence shattered. A gasp rippled louder than before. One of the guards stepped forward. "What?" Carla's voice cracked. "Jason, you can't be serious. This is my event." "My venue," he said coldly. "My catering. My staff. My brand." He looked at her one last time. And my wife. I didn't say a word. I just watched her heels scrape backward against the marble as two guards politely but firmly walked her out of her own fantasy. The doors slammed behind her. No one clapped. No one dared. Jason finally looked at me again, his voice dropping low. Are you okay? I nodded, but barely. Because this was just the beginning. And the people in that room? They hadn't even seen who I really was yet. Jason didn't let go of my hand. Not as the stunned guests whispered behind their wine glasses. Not as my aunts tried to make eye contact and suddenly remembered their drinks. And not even as he leaned in and said, "Come with me. I think it's time they learned who you are." My throat tightened. You didn't tell them? Jason looked at me, his eyes softer than his reputation ever allowed, and said quietly, "They don't deserve the truth. But they're going to hear it anyway." He led me back into the ballroom. Not to the shadows, not behind the curtain, but right to the center of the marble floor where the massive chandelier sparkled above us. Every eye turned. Every conversation died. Someone whispered, "She's his wife." Another voice snapped, "Since when?" Jason raised his hand slightly. And just like that, the gala host tapped his mic, cleared his throat, and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jason Hayes would like to say a few words." Jason didn't smile. He didn't play the charming CEO. Instead, he stood beside me, his hand firm around mine, and began. This evening was supposed to be about innovation, about legacy, about everything this brand stands for. He looked around, pausing on the smug faces now contorted with curiosity and discomfort. But I just witnessed everything we don't stand for, right here in this room. Silence. Not a breath dared move. Because some people decided that status and title were more important than dignity, that kindness could be discarded in favor of cruelty. He turned toward me, eyes meeting mine for a second. They tried to push my wife out of this room because they thought she was just a waitress. The word hung in the air like a loaded gun. Jason continued. So let me be very clear. Her name is Mara Hayes. She is not a guest here. She is the woman I married. And everything I've built, every dollar I've earned, every deal I've closed, it means nothing compared to what she's brought into my life. He wasn't performing. He was declaring war, with the truth. I scanned the room. My step-cousin Lily turned red. Aunt Susan clutched her pearls. Carla, gone, but her stains still lingered in every breath of this place. Jason's voice sharpened. This isn't a fairy tale. This isn't a publicity stunt. She's not here because of her looks or her past. She's here because she stood by me when I had nothing. He looked around again, then leaned forward and said into the mic. Unlike most of you. That hit like a bullet. I flinched. He gripped my hand tighter. I was sleeping on a friend's couch when I met her, Jason said. She worked 2 jobs. She brought me coffee when I couldn't afford one. She fixed my resume. She edited my pitch deck while she was bussing tables. And when I got my first investor, the first person I thanked wasn't a board member. It was her. He turned to me again. You taught me how to survive. You taught me what real strength is. The gala had transformed into a silent courtroom, and every guest? Guilty. Jason looked at the host. Turn the lights up. Cut the music. The host froze. Sir? You heard me. The jazzy background faded out. The gold lighting dimmed into a cold white overhead wash. No illusions now. Just harsh, exposed reality. Jason nodded once. Now, if anyone would like to explain why they thought they could insult my wife, this is your chance. Not a soul moved. One woman cleared her throat. A man by the fountain suddenly pretended to check his phone. I stared at the faces. The same faces that had laughed, jeered, and whispered. Some had called me a charity case behind my back. Others told Jason to leave me for image reasons. But now? They couldn't even meet my eyes. Jason lowered the mic, thought so. And then, he turned to me and asked gently, Would you like to say something, Mara? I should have been afraid. I should have walked away. But I didn't. I took a breath that reached all the way into my spine. I used to think being quiet made me stronger, I said. that swallowing my pain was maturity, that if I just endured long enough, maybe one day I'd be accepted. A few guests stirred. I could see the discomfort. Good. But tonight, I realized something. Silence doesn't protect you. It empowers the people who think they can walk on you. So let me say this. I looked around, locking eyes with Lily, with Susan, with the man who once told me I didn't look like wife material. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not apologizing. And I'm definitely not the one who should feel ashamed. The hush that followed was different. It wasn't just stunned. It was shattered. Jason kissed the top of my head softly, then guided me off the floor. And as we walked away, I heard it, one single, nervous clap. Then another. And another. Soon, the entire room stood and applauded, not out of joy, but because they had to. Because the truth had bulldozed through their illusion of power. I had taken just one step toward the door. But it turns out that was the step that led me straight into my place, right at the center of everything they'd tried to keep me out of. The applause faded. The guests returned to sipping, murmuring, and nervously adjusting their ties. But the atmosphere had shifted permanently. What had started as Carla Donovan's grand gala had become my reckoning. And they felt it. Jason guided me toward a quieter side of the hall where the staff passed by more discreetly. We sat near a tall window overlooking the city, and he didn't let go of my hand even once. "You sure you're okay?" he asked, voice low, guarded now that the spotlight had dimmed. I nodded. I didn't expect any of it. Jason looked like he wanted to punch a wall. "I should have told you. I didn't know she was behind this gala until yesterday. We sponsored dozens of causes. Her foundation snuck in under another name." "She did it on purpose," I said. "She wanted me out. Publicly." Jason's eyes narrowed. "Then she's going to regret it. Publicly." I should have smiled at that. But I didn't. Because something deeper stirred in me. A feeling I hadn't allowed myself in years. Not just anger, but awakening. My silence had protected Carla for too long. I had tolerated the insults, the backhanded remarks, the way she told my father I'd always be small, the way she made me feel like dirt in my own home. Jason leaned forward. "There's something you should see." He pulled out his phone and tapped a few buttons before handing it to me. It was an email chain. Carla's foundation. The event organizer. A woman named Judith. Subject line. Table assignment for waitress girl. My heart sank as I read. Make sure she's seated far from press. Behind the catering staff, if possible. No photos with Jason. He might feel obligated to act like he cares. Consider giving her an apron. Let's lean into the theme. I gripped the phone tighter. Jason's voice darkened. "She used this event to humiliate you on paper. She didn't expect me to show up. She never expected me to matter," I whispered. And that's when I knew I wouldn't walk away quietly again. I stood. "I want to go home." Jason blinked. "Now." "I need to show you something." We didn't speak the whole ride back. His hand stayed on mine the entire time. Back at our apartment, I went straight to the small wooden box in the closet. The one I hadn't touched in almost 4 years. Inside were the letters. The ones Carla never knew I'd kept. I handed them to Jason. These were for my mom's lawyer. After she passed. Before Dad remarried. Jason opened the first one. His eyes scanned quickly, then froze. "She tried to block your inheritance," he muttered. "She told the lawyer you refused it. Forged your signature." I nodded slowly. "Then she told my dad I gave up the money out of guilt. That I wanted to start fresh." I believed her. I was 17. Jason's hands curled into fists. "She stole from you," he said. "She made you poor while she lived in the house your mom built." And when I became a waitress to pay for college, I added quietly, "She told everyone I was rebelling. That I wanted to be dramatic." Jason didn't say a word. He paced the room like a storm in motion. I knew that look. He wasn't just angry. He was plotting. "She has no idea who she picked a fight with," he said. "You're not just my wife, Mara. You're the woman who got me out of a garage apartment and into the Forbes list. You're the reason I trust myself." I wanted to believe him, but My stomach twisted. She still has the power, Jason. The name. The friends. She could smear me. She tried, he snapped. And she failed. Now it's our turn. That night, we stayed up reviewing everything. Emails. Property records. Texts I'd saved. Names I'd written down from years of being whispered about at dinners. And then Jason made a call to his legal advisor. We're filing for fraud, he said.
Forgery.
Estate tampering. But that's not all.
He looked at me.
We're going to take back your mother's estate. I exhaled. It was everything I'd never had the courage to ask for. Why now? I asked. Why go so far? Jason stepped forward and touched my face. Because she tried to shame the woman I love in front of the world. Because you've carried this alone for too long. And because the only thing worse than her cruelty is what happens when we let it win. And just like that, the war began. It started small. A quiet ripple across the internet. A photo here. A whisper there. The woman everyone assumed was a gatecrasher turned out to be Jason Hayes' wife. Within 24 hours, #GalaWife was trending. And then the real storm hit. Articles flooded in. She's just a waitress. How billionaire Jason Hayes silenced the room with 5 words. Carla Donovan under fire for alleged estate fraud. Sources claim stepdaughter's inheritance was blocked. Carla tried to act fast. She released a polished statement blaming a misunderstanding, claimed she deeply respected all women regardless of profession, and even staged a photo op at a charity kitchen. But the timing was too clean. Too late. Jason's legal team moved faster. They filed a formal complaint, submitted the forged documents, and attached a timeline that went back over 5 years. They didn't leak it to the press, someone else did. Most likely someone in Carla's own house. And the truth? It spread like gasoline on fire. I watched it all from our apartment, frozen. Every headline with my name felt surreal. I wasn't used to being seen. I wasn't used to matching. Jason turned off the TV. You okay? I looked at him. They're not laughing anymore. He came over, cupped my face gently. No, Mara. Now they're listening. Then the phone rang. It was Judith, the woman from the foundation's email chain. Her voice trembled. I didn't know it would go that far. Carla just said to keep the tone light. Please don't sue me. I'll cooperate. I have copies of everything. Jason calmly replied. Then send them. All of it. By the end of the week, Carla's face was on every finance channel, not as a respected philanthropist, but as the woman accused of defrauding her stepdaughter and humiliating her at her own gala. The footage had leaked too. The moment she told the staff to escort me out. The gasps. Jason's voice. His declaration. She belongs wherever I am. People watched it over and over. Some called it romantic. Others called it justice. I called it the beginning of my healing. But it wasn't over. Because one night, around 11:30 p.m., the buzzer rang. Jason answered the intercom. It was Carla.
Sobbing.
Begging to be let in. She says she wants to apologize, he said carefully. I stood in the hallway, arms folded. Does she want to apologize or make another performance? He looked at me. Your call. I paused. And then I said, let her up. The elevator chimed. Carla stepped into the apartment like someone walking through the ashes of a home she used to own. Her designer coat hung awkwardly on her frame, and her mascara had left faint trails beneath her eyes. She didn't look powerful anymore. She looked small. Jason stood by the kitchen island, arms crossed, saying nothing. I sat on the edge of the sofa, calm, unmoving. Carla took a shaky breath and finally spoke. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I didn't flinch. You told them to give me an apron. Her lip quivered. That was a poor joke.
No.
That was hate wrapped in sarcasm. And now you're here because it blew up in your face. She blinked quickly, trying to hold her voice steady. I was angry. I felt threatened after your father passed. You reminded him of her. Everything she built. He never looked at me the same when you were around. So, you took what she left me. Silence. Jason finally stepped in. Carla, You didn't just make her feel like an outsider. You made her one. You took what was hers. You tried to bury her, and when that didn't work, you tried to humiliate her in front of the world. Carla's voice cracked. I lost everything this week. Donors pulled out. The board suspended me. People spit when I walk into my own office. Pleased if you drop the charges, I'll give back every cent. I stared at her.
She still didn't get it.
I don't want your money, I said. She looked up, stunned. Then what do you want? I want my name back. I want my story told the way it really happened, and I want every young girl who's ever been called just a waitress to know that silence isn't their only option. Jason nodded slowly, his voice steady. You don't get to control this anymore. Carla finally broke. She slumped into the nearest chair and sobbed, not because she understood, but because she had lost. Not just wealth, not just power, but the one thing she held over me for years: control. I stood and walked to the window. Below us, the city pulsed with light. Headlines still flashed my name. But this time, I wasn't a punchline. I was proof that no amount of humiliation can erase the truth. That kindness isn't weakness. And that being underestimated might just be the greatest advantage of all. Jason walked up behind me and placed a hand on my shoulder. What now? He asked. I looked out at the skyline, breathing steady, spine tall. Now, I said, we build something that can never be taken. And together, we turned our backs on the woman who once laughed at my uniform, while the world finally saw the woman I'd always been. Not a waitress, not a shadow, not a stepping stone, but the one they should have never underestimated.